All right, so about Mimi. Mimi West is passionate about career resilience, creating personal growth opportunities, and curating phenomenal life experiences. She's lived in 5 countries and has over a decade of marketing leadership experience in corporate general management, as well as a smaller scale digital startup. She's a global marketing manager in 3M Healthcare and worked in previous marketing and brand management roles in General Mills, Schwann's, and Land O'Lakes. West received her MBA at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business and her bachelor's in vocal performance at BYU Provo. She served a full-time mission in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and still strives to keep up her Spanish and other languages she studied in college. West is a retired opera singer and Zumba instructor. She has 3 energetic sons and a software engineer, marathon running husband who has supported her career as they've moved across the world. The Wests are active members of their church and school communities, enjoy investing in real estate, and constantly dream about what comes next. So we're super excited to hear from you. So take it away, Mimi.
Thank you, Cameron. That was a beautiful intro, and aloha to everybody. I wish I could physically be there with you today. It's getting evening time for me here in the Minneapolis metro area, but super excited to address you. I understand, it's an honor in a way, an honor and maybe a little bit of pressure to be the very last speaker, knowing that graduation is on the mind. Let's see, how many are graduating this year? Would that be everybody? Okay. Yes. So I was connected with Anne, your fearless leader, professor, and I had proposed to her a list of topics that I was very passionate about. And so I know she took that back to you guys and came back to me with the feedback that career resilience, building your strengths into your job, as well as job hunting tips were 3 things that were very top of mind that you wanted to hear from me today. So I have prepared a PowerPoint. I'll admit I was fussing with it up to the last second, so glad we turned cameras on so I could just stop. Let me attempt to share my screen with you, and this will aid our conversation. Let's see, reminding myself how I share screen. Here we go, share screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. Got the right one. Can you see it yet?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, it pulled up.
Great. Are you seeing a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And now it should be in presentation mode. Good. We are rocking and rolling. Okay, so Cameron gave a beautiful intro to me, so I won't go too in depth on who I am. I think y'all know who I am. So I have been a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints my whole life. It's been a really important part of my story, and I love to connect with other students at the BYU schools. For that reason, went to BYU Provo for my undergrad, as Cameron mentioned, UVA Darden for my graduate degree, currently working in medical at 3M in a very kind of marketing, general management, leadership type role. Now, I believe in this class, we have a little bit of a split, those who may be more inclined toward kind of marketing and maybe some more corporate roles, some who may be more interested in entrepreneurship. So I guess I'm looking at you guys. If you raise your hand, if you're a little bit more entrepreneurially inclined. Okay, and then if you're a little bit more like marketing, not that they're mutually exclusive, but okay. Okay, this is helpful. This helps me gear my talk in a way that's relevant to you. So I'll focus a little bit more on the marketing side of things today. But yeah, career resilience and longevity is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. And we live in a very tumultuous time. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing that, like unprecedented disruption, global pandemics. It can feel very unstable. But what can help safeguard your personal self and your career against the ebbs and flows that are out there today? Hopefully what you walk away with is 3 main things. It starts with building personal resilience and a foundation of personal character strength. And then the second component I see is once you get to influencing other people, learning how to lead with your strengths and lead from your strengths. And then the third aspect, this gets more into the job hunting, kind of very tactical side of things, becoming your own best advocate. If there's one thing that all of these tactics, which I could write a book on, in fact, I have written a book on, like job hunting and job search tips, if there's one thing I want you to remember today, it's becoming your own best advocate. And we'll talk about what that means. So personal resilience, you may have heard some things about resilience. I'm going to recommend some additional books. If you're a curious type and want to grab some books, the one book I recommend for building personal resilience is called The Resilience Factor. Feel free to write that down. I can also send it to you in the chat afterward. There are some very specific skills around resilience that you can develop as an individual. And I think of resilience not just as bouncing back after hardship, but steering through good times and bad times. Another excellent book is called Grit by Angela Duckworth. Perhaps you've read it. So Grit, very similar concept. And they've done studies to demonstrate over time, what separates people who have career longevity or longevity in any endeavor for that matter, with those who kind of fall by the wayside. And it's developing this grit, this ability to stick with it over long periods of time, whether you feel good, whether you feel bad, just sticking with it. So Grit and The Resilience Factor, 2 excellent books I highly recommend. Now, many of you do this, and I can't emphasize how much this is going to help you in your life. Here at the BYU schools, we really emphasize connecting with God through prayer and connecting to a purpose that is higher than yourself. When you encounter those challenges in life, those adversities that are hard to steer through and hard to overcome, and you need to really call on that personal resilience, when you're connected with God and with your higher sense of purpose, it will give you the strength you need to carry on. And when you can remind yourself of your why, your purpose, and let that propel you, that's going to be just this fountain of strength that you can call upon throughout your whole life. How many of you have heard of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? Is that a term that's familiar? Okay, great. I won't go in too much depth then. I recommend there's the Growth Mindset book by Carol Dweck. She goes into more depth about it. But basically, if you see failures as an opportunity for growth, or you say, if there's one kind of magical word that unlocks the growth mindset, it's the word yet. And I use this all the time when I'm new, I'm onboarding to a new responsibility, I'm doing something I've never done this before. Instead of saying, I don't know, I say, I don't know yet, but I can find out. Instead of saying like, oh, I'm bad at singing, oh, I'm bad at math, it's like, well, I haven't learned this yet, but I know I can. And that will unlock just that confidence that you don't always have in yourself, just reminding yourself you were born to learn. And maybe you don't know this yet, but you can learn. Because we all know the risk of burnout in career is very high. I had a therapist say one time that the average time to burnout for a working professional post-graduation is about 2 years. So many people after graduating, they'll kind of hit a wall. Like, was this the career I wanted? I don't know. Am I respecting my personal boundaries? Well, I have a little tip, a little trick for you to help prevent as well as manage burnout or any adversity you find. And this was very much informed from when I shifted from kind of CPG food focus into the medical space. I found myself thinking a lot in terms of prevention versus treatment. This is how medical people think. When you're forming a comprehensive health plan for a patient, you have to think about, okay, what is the condition we're treating? But more and more, the focus is being shifted in healthcare towards prevention, and that's really where it needs to be. You can do a world of good for your own mental health and physical health, the more emphasis you put on a comprehensive prevention plan. So I wrote a book here, and this is a little excerpt from my book, about putting together for yourself a comprehensive mental health plan. And inherent in that is kind of coping strategies, both on the prevention as well as the treatment side. And you can, this is getting really tactical, but I've shared this with people and they found it to be really helpful. Being able to anticipate those things that are really, really challenging for you. There's this common cycle where people experience anxiety, maybe thinking excessively or ruminating, and that kind of creates this vicious cycle of anxiety. And that can lead to insomnia. And over time, that can lead to depression. And many working professionals really struggle with these things. The more disrupted and unstable our world becomes, these things are not going to go away. So, taking some time to think through and discover for you what those effective tactics are for prevention and treatment. Maybe going for a walk is like the best thing you can do for yourself to just kind of reset your mind. When you find yourself thinking an anxious thought, how can you pull that back into a thought that can be more constructive for you? If you guys have questions, I'll take them at the end. We could talk about this a lot, but I'll keep moving for the sake of time. So to sum up this kind of first chunk that I had in mind to talk to you about, building personal resilience, it's these things. It's building that strength of character and that spiritual foundation, that connection to God and that purpose that's bigger than yourself, developing resilient skills, developing that growth mindset, and then really being thoughtful and writing down this comprehensive pain prevention and management plan with specific coping skills for you. So moving on to our next big section that I wanted to share with you today, and that's leading from your strengths. Life presents us with many opportunities to become keenly aware of what our setbacks are, what our weaknesses are. Well, it's very important to remind yourself, where are you strong and how can you pull that in to your daily life? How can you pull that into your studies as you wrap them up here in school? How can you pull that into your job and lead from that? One thing I learned about myself, for example, so I've learned how to speak up. And in fact, a friend of mine just gifted me this mug that I use for my water. Speak up. For some people, speaking up is very intimidating. They don't like to speak up in crowds. They don't like to speak up in class. This can be a particular challenge for introverts. Maybe if you're an introvert, maybe you don't like to kind of put yourself out there in that way. For me personally, I don't have an issue speaking up, and maybe it's my performance background. I kind of learn how to unshy myself. I learned how to put myself out there, but I found people listened to me more when I wrote things down, and that I was a lot more influential in getting my point across when I could write things down. So what I started to do was prep people before meetings by writing an email, and a very beautiful organized email. Then when they were in the meeting where I wanted to influence them, I would have a little one-pager printout and I would distribute it. So they had something paper that they could refer to as I spoke, and they weren't, drifting off as people do in meetings. Now in this virtual format, I use the screen share, much like I'm doing right now. So having something written to complement my speaking, I have found to be a way I can lead from my strength. Here's a quote that I love. Robert Kiyosaki, if you're familiar with him, he wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's the most well-read personal finance book of all time. So our friend Robert says, when you are young, work to learn, not to earn. So if we only work for money, we really leave out a lot of opportunities for us to learn the skills that can make us successful in the long term. And so keep that in mind. Building personal awareness is a lifelong endeavor, lifelong pursuit. How many of you guys have taken some personal assessments before? Awesome, I see some raised hands. Maybe you guys have some favorite ones. Feel free to type those in the chat. A couple that I strongly recommend are like Myers-Briggs. That's the one where it shows are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Thinking, feeling. I see some head nods. That's a really excellent one just to gain kind of internal, that personal awareness of yourself. Then there are some really good ones that can help you understand how you influence other people, where your strengths are. So maybe you heard of Strengths Finder 2.0 is a really excellent one. There's another one called Career Leader, and that's where you get a little bit more into how does this connect to your career? What are your work preferences? And I will say, early on, just take a bunch of them, Google them. There's a million of them out there. The more results you get back, the more holistic picture you'll start to get of yourself. And as you mature, you'll want to continue taking them, but you'll find that it's mostly the reflection that you do going into these assessments that'll be more of value to you than the results you get out of them. But up front, it's going to be more results, and then it's going to be more your reflection over time, and you really come to know yourself. Before we move on, does anybody else have other assessments that they've taken that they would want to share with the group, or ones that you guys recommend?
The disc.
The
If you guys,
disc.
yeah, that one's decent.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna write that down because I need to retake it. Sometimes your results change over time. Was there, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but was there anything in the disc one that was like a huge aha to you, or just like a one-liner you'd want to share? Like, what is the disc for those who aren't familiar?
I think it's also good for seeing yourself in a different light. I forgot exactly what everything stood for. I took it like 2 years ago, but me and this one other Japanese dude, we're pretty tight, and we're all like, "Oh my goodness, this is what we're gonna be." And then we're complete opposite, and we're like, "Oh wow, I'm like an idiot," because we thought we knew ourselves pretty well, but then just kind of brought a different part of us out. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I had a similar experience with the disc one I took a while ago, and I found the results to be very surprising. That was one that I didn't feel I could game the results of. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not as self-aware as I thought. Great example. Anyone else before we move on?
I don't remember what tests they were, but they were like legit psychology tests that I took in my personality psych class. And I mean, there are a lot of personality tests in there. I know there's like the relationship attachment one, so like you understand how you are in that area of life, and just other things that help you understand yourself better. So I know we're all business majors and we're studying entrepreneurship and stuff, but that is a good class to take to just understand how you operate. Also, motivational psych, that one is good for understanding how to market to people, even though it's a psych class. But yeah, sorry, not a specific test, but there are some good ones in that course.
No, that's awesome. I've got these rich keywords I just wrote down, and often you can just Google stuff, and there's a lot of free ones that you can take. I'm like an assessment junkie, and I recommend everybody just take them, take them, take them, take them, and see over time if your results change. That's also fun. Awesome. So assessments can help with this too, but I think what helps even more is experience and reflecting. I encourage everyone to become a very reflective person. If you're into journal writing, highly recommend just kind of dumping your thoughts out onto paper. I've adopted this as a practice in my life, and I've gotten a lot of good results from it. So think about how you influence people. I mentioned this a little bit before. You know, if you're more of a writer, try to see how you can pull that into your daily life. Oh, okay. I just noticed someone typed something in the chat. Okay, so I see desk. MBTI is the most common resource that's found at our school. Awesome. Sorry, I was slow on the draw, but thank you guys for your comments. Okay, so coming back to influence. How to win friends and influence people. Excellent book. If you've read it, read it again. They say like read it every week. That sounds excessive to me, but there's definitely more to learn. It's a very rich, deep book with a lot of insight. Let's see. I want to make sure I like get to some of these other notes that I wanted to share with you guys today. So I liked this picture because it shows a person waving a flag, but everybody influences in such a unique way. Maybe you're a socialite. Maybe there's something informative in your social life that you can pull into your job in a way that's appropriate. I found that I tend to be surrounded by people who are pretty dry and pretty like business only. I actually like to be around people like that because I tend to be the colorful one who brings some personality to our teams. I like to become what I affectionately refer to as like the mom of the team. I'm like the heart and the soul of my teams. And I like to provoke people to think differently. And, you know, because I'm a member of the church, people know I'm like a very nice, sweet kind of a girl, but they're surprised at like some of the questions I have, or they're surprised when I say something kind of sassy or shocking because they don't really expect that from me. And so I kind of like to surprise people. And I have a lot of fun with that. And I think it's a way that I encourage people to just think differently. And maybe you guys have some experiences like that in your lives where you've been in a situation, people think they know you, and then you can kind of intentionally use that to surprise them and astonish them and like have a lot of fun with that. I encourage just trying new things and experimenting to see where am I strong? Where do I influence people? And how can I use that in my professional life? It looks like okay. Here are just some examples. I know this is kind of a word dump on a screen, but I recently did this as an exercise for my boss. He asked me like, what are your strengths and how can I leverage that on my team? And so I said like establishing best practices and processes to maximize the probability of success. That's very relevant to any team, but especially where you're a marketer and your job is influencing. Your job is increasing demand and ultimately growing the company. Optimizing solutions around customer needs, like really being able to decipher what are those pain points that the customer has that no one else is addressing, and how can we as a company or organization that you're involved with bring that unique value to play. I'm personally passionate about reducing waste and cost. So there's like an environmental and sustainable component of that that's just always been inherent and like a deep part of my heart. But as when I speak to business people who have varying levels of like caring about that, it always translates to your bottom line. You know, I want to reduce cost. I think we're spending too much on this packaging. So not only is it environmentally wasteful, but we're throwing money away. How can we optimize that and still deliver on an awesome customer experience? I have a lot of passion around that. Maybe you guys have talked in your marketing classes about design thinking or innovation methodologies for wicked problem solving. So these are all things I like to bring into my teams, and I like to kind of make it simple for my manager. Like, okay, here's kind of marketing strategy stuff. And then on the left-hand side, what you see, here's people leadership. Here's how I influence. I work in an environment where there's many, many people. So 3M is a company of like 90,000 employees all over the world. I'm in a global role and we have calls with countries all the time. And I get emails of like all kinds of random questions. So working in an environment with just tons and tons of people, lots of ambiguity, lots of change, it's an opportunity for me to make sure I'm connecting people across the organization so that we're having the right conversations at the right time and in the most appropriate manner. You'd be surprised. People who you think are talking to each other, you can never make that assumption. Sometimes it's up to you, even when you feel like that's not really my job. Sometimes it's up to you to get your stakeholders together and make sure they are actually talking so you can move forward on your initiatives. I've found it's I'm pretty good at identifying those areas within a business that other people don't think about, other people neglect, that actually hold us back in our progress. That's all I'll say about that, because now it's just becoming about me. I really want the focus to be on like my pearls of wisdom to you guys. But Ether 1227, who does not like love this scripture? I'm gonna read it. Actually, no, I'm tired of hearing myself talking. Could I get a volunteer to read the scripture, please?
I can read it.
Thank you.
And if men come unto me, I will show unto them their weakness. I give unto men weakness, that they may be humble, and my grace is sufficient for all men that humble themselves before me. For if they humble themselves before me and have faith in me, then will I make weak things become strong unto them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful reading. And so nice to hear someone else's voice besides mine. We believe this. There is power in this, and I hope that you guys have seen this power in your own lives. So let's talk about weaknesses. You're going to have them. We all have them. There are going to be days you feel like your weaknesses maybe cloud your view so much you can't even see your strengths. I'll tell you a little story how this happened to me. So in the context of thinking of where you're weak, when I went to grad school, it had been many years since I had taken a really intense math class. And we had this little tool called Excel that's pretty foundational to the work you do as a business person. I had such a hard time with it. I hadn't really used Excel before business school. It was intimidating to me. I remember the day when I was sitting in the front of the classroom and I was there on my laptop, kind of lost in the lecture. And I turn around and it's just like this ocean of people on their laptops, like just like cranking away on the spreadsheet to answer the professor's questions. And I just about had a heart attack. Like I had like sleepless nights. I was so scared of the Excel. I was like, I'm never going to do this. I'm going to drop out of business school. This is too hard. I'm just going to go back to being a mom because that's familiar. I know how to do that. Forget this was a stupid idea. I'm leaving business school. Bye. Well, I prayed about it and it did not immediately solve the problem, but I tried to call upon that personal resilience I didn't even think I had at that time. And it actually took me many years to like overcome this fear. And it was just a mental block until I realized, you know, I am good at dancing. I'm good at dancing. How can I pull that into Excel? Now, this is not immediately transferable, you would think, and it's not, which is why I didn't think of it for years. But I'm like, I learned how to think in terms of dancing, like how you move your arms, how you move your feet, and I learned how to maneuver on the dance floor. What if I think about Excel spreadsheets as just my next dance floor? Well, the moment I had this little mental shift in my mind, all of a sudden learning Excel became really fun. And I realized I'm a very kinesthetic learner. If I'm just like learning by reading, that's not going to work for me. I need to like kinesthetize it. I need to pretend I'm dancing and use Excel as my dance floor. So the moment I did this, everything changed for me. Excel, just another dance floor. It helped me overcome that fear, see it in a different way. So I could, sorry, I know this picture's not very modest, but I'm in my Zumba clothes. And this was a campaign I did at the end of last year for moms, like COVID, you are stronger than these hard times. You know, moms love it. Had my baby there. So think about that in the context of like whatever you're weak in, try to get creative in how you can pull your strength into that thing. And remember growth mindset, like I haven't learned this yet, but I will conquer this. And hopefully that will help you overcome any challenge. Okay, so section 2, a little wrap up, review what we've already talked about, work to learn, not just to earn, build personal awareness. We talked about all those assessments. Learn how you influence with ease, how you are unique amongst everybody you're surrounded by. Where do you have swagger? And pull that swagger into areas that feel awkward and weak to you, and that will help you overcome those weaknesses. Okay, so now we get a little bit more to the tactical stuff on the job hunt. Who is like not nervous about job hunting? Yeah, that's what I thought. So job hunting is super awkward. Few people love it. There are things about the job hunting process that truly energized me. But ultimately, nobody likes it. Like, it would be so wonderful if jobs just came to us, if mommy and daddy just took care of it, but it doesn't work like that. We have to like go out, we have to toot our own horn, bleh. Who wants to do that? Well, I have a couple of techniques that I've learned in my life that I hope will be helpful to you guys. So yeah, become your own best advocate. What does that mean? Learn how to like separate yourself from the job hunt process in such a way that you can send your best self as a representative for you. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about themselves. A lot of people don't like to be like, I grew this business by 20%. I'm so smart. That's just a very uncomfortable place for a lot of people. So when I learned how to call upon who I call interview girl for me to go and represent myself in interviews, I was like fearless. Like interview girl is like hardcore. She says like exactly what they want to hear. She doesn't hold back. She asks tough questions. That's who I am. I like call upon my performance background to kind of separate myself a little bit and know that I'm playing a role. I'm playing a character. And right now I'm in an interview. I'm interview girl. I do the same thing when I'm presenting. I am presenting girl or presentation girl. I'm not just me. I'm like taking on this alter ego who is going to represent myself. For me personally, that helps me overcome that awkwardness. And that's when I really had a lot of fun with it. And like a lot of fun with like how much can I brag about myself in the context of it's not really me, it's interview girl. So hopefully that little mind shift can give you some ideas as you guys are preparing for interviews, as you're looking at job postings. You might have heard this Sheryl Sandberg quote. She quoted, or she talked about this in the context of women, but it absolutely applies to men. In fact, my husband is like pretty shy. And so I find this is very applicable to him. You know, many people, she says women, but I'm going to insert people. Many people will look at a job post and not apply if they think, oh, I'm only qualified for 60% of these bullet points. Or like, I have to, sorry, I'm butchering the quote. Let me just say her quote and then my watered down version. Okay, so Sheryl Sandberg says, a lot of men will apply for a job if they meet like 60% of the qualifications. A lot of women will not apply to that same job unless they meet 100% of the qualifications. Okay, so my takeaway from that is, okay, there's this general trend like men versus women, but I would just say there are a lot of people who think this. They're like, no, I'm not qualified. I'm going to exclude myself from that application process. But I would push you guys to really challenge that thinking. If you find yourself thinking that way, just apply. Apply anyway. Raise your hand anyway. Go for that job anyway. Have a pipeline of opportunities. You know, have a goal for like how many jobs you apply to a day, how many networking calls you have a day, and just try to put a lot of activity behind it. And eventually you will find the job that's the right fit for you. Admittedly, I ran out of time to like put pretty pictures to all my bullet points, but we'll keep moving here. I highly recommend that you take time to really intentionally envision yourself in a lot of different roles. If you aren't sure what you want to do with the rest of your life, that's perfectly okay. Like most people don't. And I think it's almost the wrong question for people to ask, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or like, what do you want to do with your life? How the heck are you supposed to know? I don't even know where I'm going to be in a year. All I know is that next step for me and the kinds of things I want and the different scenarios and the different possibilities that I envision for myself. So, you know, try on some different costumes, try on some different suits, put yourself in different locations, meditate. And when you meditate, like really envision what it's like to be in different roles. I would say the most secret weapon that you have, especially as students, is the informational interview. Have you guys talked about informational interviews, or does that mean anything to anyone? Okay, I see a couple head nods, well, I'm not sure what that is. So it's a method of networking where basically let's say you're still in the student role. So pull your student card. It's a very, very nice card to have. Reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or just somebody who you meet maybe via this forum or something like that. You say, hey, I'm a student. I would like to just learn about you. I just want to learn about your job. I want to learn about your experience. Tell me about you. And just kind of have a casual format, 30-minute meeting, phone call, whatever, to just let them talk about themselves. Chances are, like the more senior business person you're talking to, the more they love to talk about themselves. And the less likely people are to reach out to them and do this. So it's a pleasure. I have yet to have somebody turn me down when I say, hey, can I just talk to you or just talk about yourself? They're like, yes, please. And they'll just blah, 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 talk about themselves. And that's like the best way you can learn. And you can even envision yourself in their role or in a similar situation where you're faced with that challenge. And honestly, that's how I've learned more than school, more than almost anything, the informational interview. So all that to say, there are some amazing tools out there for searching, for researching jobs. I'm sure you're aware of many of these. LinkedIn is like my number one. LinkedIn is amazing. You don't even need a premium account. You can see jobs, you can apply to jobs, you can stalk people that you're interested in. You can like shamelessly copy their profile and like use their verbiage. Do this. Like LinkedIn is absolutely incredible. Glassdoor, I'm sure you guys are aware, it's great for seeing like what is that experience like in that job at that company. Sometimes you can see how much people get paid. That's very useful information. What is the work-life balance like? What are the common things that people say about this job? See, how are we doing on time? We're doing okay. Indeed, I haven't used it as much, but I threw it up as another example. There's so many examples. Does anyone else have some favorite like digital tools that they use either for job search or like crafting your job hunting portfolio?
If you have like social media accounts for your industry or your field, You can find job opportunities on there. Like I found a lot of internships and stuff like through Twitter and even on Instagram. And sometimes like there's digital community apps. Like I know Clubhouse is really big. There's also Chalk, which is kind of like Clubhouse, but it also has a messaging feature. I actually got an interview for an internship last fall because I found a job through Chalk, or I found an internship through Chalk, and the CEO posted about it. So yeah, you can use social media too, not just like I mean, LinkedIn is technically social media, but it's definitely like on the more professional side of things. But you can use other apps like Instagram and Twitter.
Interesting. So how do you use Instagram? Tell me more about that. I'm intrigued.
So sorry, I live by the road and it's always super loud. But basically, like I would go to music industry networking events in the past year because everything's online. So I've actually been able to build my network there more in the last year online than I have in my entire college experience when it comes to that stuff. Because at all these events, there are spreadsheets and everybody puts their information on there. They put their LinkedIn, their Instagram, their Twitter, all that stuff. And some of them, they know about job opportunities. And so they'll post about them for the different companies they work for or companies that they care about. So I've been able to find opportunities through that.
That's awesome. You guys are giving me ideas I'm writing down. What else you got? I'm sure you guys have more good ideas.
I don't know. For me, the best ways I've connected with people have been through either just LinkedIn. Like I've honestly just kind of looked at companies that I like, and I'll either cold call them or I'll just like try to get just connections or whatever. But also going to events, kind of like Cameron said, I've been able to actually get like some of my like best mentors have been just like people I've connected to with through like different like panel discussions or whatever, and I talked to them afterwards and we had a informational interview and it just kind of developed from there.
You guys are pros. I love this. I love you both mentioned, yeah, like social, yeah, websites, but it's the people. Like it's how you find the people. That's the whole point. And I love this. Like you make the best connections by sort of these casual chance encounters. I can't emphasize that enough. And I think these tools just empower you to put yourself in a place where you can make those connections. And you can't always even predict where it's going to go. And that gives a lot of people anxiety. But obviously, you guys have already seen success with it. So keep going. That's awesome. Any other ideas? I love this.
I also wanted to add that, like, if you want to connect with somebody, you can look at their socials and see what they're like. This one girl who I reached out to a couple months ago, she had opened up a position for her company for interns. And she was tweeting about how people were super rude. And she was saying, don't do this when you email somebody or that or blah, blah, blah. She posted on her agency's account too. And I ended up reaching out to her for a marketing project that I'm doing for Sister Springer's class. And I did everything. Let me say this. Everything she said not to do, I avoided. Everything she said to do, I did. And I got the nicest response from her. And she's super generous and willing to help me with this project. So look at their socials. You might be able to see what they're like and get a feel of how you should approach them.
That's super smart. And actually, that's a really good marketing skill that a lot of marketers overlook. It's being able to, in such a scrappy way, kind of be a detective. As a marketer, you really are a detective of that human behavior and kind of taking in that information and then being able to put that into an action plan. So like you took the feedback on do this, don't do this, or you were able to kind of contextualize that feedback and then act on it. That's a super powerful skill for life in general, but especially for anybody interested in marketing. Wow, you guys are inspiring me today. Thank you. Okay, so I didn't have as much time to like do as many dedicated slides, but let's kind of wrap up this section, then we can Q&A and just chat and visit as you guys want. So becoming your own best advocate is really the top line for job hunting advice I'd love to leave you with today. Learning how to represent yourself, learning how to talk about yourself in such a way that alleviates that awkwardness, but enables you to kind of toot your own horn. Because if you don't, no one's going to. sadly. So don't sell yourself short. Represent yourself. Envision yourself in many different roles. Keep an open mind. Even more importantly, keep networking doors open. You guys sound like you're already doing that, and I commend you. Keep going. Leverage the informational interview. Pull out your student card as often as possible. And even as you're a young professional, people love to mentor young people. You say, you don't even have to like say, I am the rising generation, but it's like a call to action. When you're saying, hey, I'm new in my career, I'd love to just learn from you. People eat that up. It's very, very valuable. People love to teach. People are hungry to mentor and really feel like they're contributing to the rising generation. Oh, I didn't have a slide for this, but I could talk all day about the need to rehearse your interview stories even as you're living them. So first of all, have you guys talked about interview skills and how to structure your stories? Context, action, result. So I literally do this. Anytime I'm preparing for an interview, I get super tactical with it. I create a fresh new, either a spreadsheet or a Word document. And I say, okay, what are those stories I'm going to bring into my interview? And you've probably heard the typical questions like, tell me about a time you led something. Tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult person. Tell me about a time you resolved a conflict. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. You know, just gather an inventory of what those kinds of stories are, and then always pull it back to your top like 3 or 4 stories that you think really make you shine. And so if you don't have a lot of work experience, you're going to have to make it up in creative ways from like your volunteer life, maybe from your church service, maybe from a mission if you served one. But crafting those stories in a way they want to hear that's not just blah, blah, like a regurgitation of all the detail, but what they want to hear is like, what is the context? What actions did you take? How did you think about things? And then what were the results of those actions? Context, action, result. And the more formulaic you can be with your stories, the more they'll really pop and make you sound like $1 million and people will just be throwing jobs at you. So you got to rehearse your stories. It's awkward, but like record yourself, listen to the playback, rehearse them in the mirror, call up friends and mock interview. And just, you know, it's better to fall on your face when you're practicing by yourself or with friends than to botch up the actual interview. But hey, if you do botch up the interview, there's always a way to recover. And I have funny stories about that too. But the other side of that is try to think about your experiences that you're going through as preparing you for your next thing. So if you're going through a really difficult thing, if you're managing a difficult project, if you're dealing with a difficult person, try to be reflective and say, okay, how would I pitch this as an interview story? And that actually might help you have the kind of the frame of mind you need to handle it even better than when you're just kind of reacting to things, if that makes sense. So think about that, rehearsing your stories even as you're living them. And then, of course, you guys, I trust you've probably talked about this, but it always bears repeating. Craft your resume around results. So have your bullet points not just describe things you've done in your life, but what are those results? And almost pulling in these mini interview stories into each bullet point. You know, when I worked at hamburger factory, or, you know, like whatever job it is, not only what you did, but how did that bring value and benefit to your company or your organization if it was a volunteer thing? What things did you do that drove results? And the extent to which you can put numbers behind that is even better and makes it really pop on the page. Sometimes you have to be really creative about this. But as you're looking at jobs and like, take a real detailed look at the description. What are they looking for? And how can I kind of craft my resume around that? So for example, they're like, we want a marketer with good project management skills. Well, try to come up with a bullet point and or story where you demonstrated good project management skills and then load those keywords into your written collateral. If you're applying for jobs online, like if you use LinkedIn or other platforms, sometimes they have artificial intelligence like robots that really scan for those keywords. So try to load it with really, really rich keywords that match your dream job or that job that you're going for. So to summarize and just review what we've talked about today, building career resilience is really about building that personal strength and that personal resilience, leading from your strengths, becoming your own best advocate. Blah, 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 summary of what we did it, but you guys got this. I know we're staring graduation in the face. We're staring a very strange world and a very disrupted workforce in the face, but jobs are out there and hiring managers are out there and they're eager for the talents and the wonder and the light and the joy that you bring. So with that, I know we have like maybe 2 minutes left. I'll take questions.
So, did your opera career come before your career as a marketing manager? Okay, how did you pivot the two industries and these are very different roles? And how did you bring your skills into that?
Yeah, it was very challenging. Pivoting was challenging. There were things I really loved about the performance life, things I was kind of half-hearted about, and things I super hated. What it came down to for me personally is I wanted to write my own script. And I didn't mean literally, I want to be a playwright. I wanted to write the script of my life. And I was tired of taking direction from directors who thought they owned my talent. And I just felt it was limiting for me. So I started by taking where I was and wrapping that into kind of a mompreneur venture. And that's where my little startup came. So I put together a massive open online course where I leveraged my music expertise and I positioned it towards students and their parents and music teachers and like, how do we build the dream team? So kind of taking my insights from having worked in the industry and having worked as a music teacher, putting that into a digital offering that enabled me to scale and make more money, but also learn how to run a business. And it was kind of in the course of building that I discovered, hey, you know, I kind of have a knack for this business thing, but I want to take it one step further. I want to get my MBA. Now, the hardest part was positioning myself for MBA schools to have them take me seriously. If it's like, I was an opera singer, how do I translate that into like, I want to be like a brand manager? So I had to kind of creatively translate my experiences. I didn't lie. I was like, yo, I was an opera singer, but you have like hiring managers don't have a lot of imagination. You really have to be like, okay, I did this activity and how it is relevant is this. And so I did that in my resume. I did that in my stories. I did it in my application. I did not expect to get into a program as good as the one that I did end up getting in. So I think I did something right. Then the imposter syndrome kicks in. That's a real thing. Women, introverts, a lot of people really struggle with this where you're like, oh, I overrepresented myself. I made them think I'm cooler than I am. I don't belong here. That was a real thing as I was, onboarding to a new career change, new industry, new company, new everything. But that's where you got to kick in that growth mindset. You got to be like, hey, yes, I'm new to this. Yes, I don't have the gobs of experience that my competition has, but I was born to learn and I have things they don't have. So I'm going to learn this. I'm going to be awesome. And my diverse experience is going to make me so much more interesting. And so you have to believe that yourself before you can help other people believe it. And when you doubt it, just kind of push through and pray and, all those things to keep you going. I hope that answered your question. That was kind of a long-winded answer. It was a lot. It was hard.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I believe very, very deeply in career transformations. I think you can go from any point A to point B. It's not easy, but hey, if you guys ever encounter that, call me because I can talk you through it. I can coach you.
Wait, okay, it's broken. Can we connect with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. So you can find me, Mimi West. In fact, some lovely people connected with me even before this event. So I'm happy with the little promos that went out. So yep, I'm there on LinkedIn. I think it also links to my personal email, which is my legal name, mariellewest@gmail.com. Either way, connect with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry, Logan, I kept cutting you off. I saw you unmuting and then muting once I started talking.
No, it's fine. I was going to ask that same question, so you're good.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to connect with you guys. I've really enjoyed learning from you and hearing about your experiences, hearing about things that are on your mind.
Well, thank you for speaking today. This was awesome. You're the best last speaker of the semester we could have had. It was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. You guys are amazing. And good luck with everything. I truly, truly wish you the best.
Thank you. All right, I can't end this meeting because I'm not the host, but thank you so much. Oh wait, I broke this. Okay, we're all still here. All right. Yeah, it's 2:53. Do you have time for more questions if anybody has them? Because it's kind of just up to the speakers. Like they can go as long as they want to.
Yeah, I've got more time, so hit me up with questions. Looks like maybe some in the chat. Oh, we got, yes, Grit Angela Duttwer. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Excellent book. Okay, so I just want to make sure I wasn't missing any questions there. But yeah, don't be shy. Any other questions? Now's your chance, guys.
I have a question. So something I feel like as I move towards graduation that I really want to have is a good mentor. And I know you kind of touched on it already, but any advice or like anything I could look for when trying to find a mentor that would help me how to not be like annoying reaching out to people to be a mentor and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a fair question. And I know one that gets a lot of talk these days, the importance of having mentor figures, coaches, people who help propel us to the next step. I always take it back to what the goal is. If you're not sure you know what you want, that's okay. Maybe you start by just having those informational interviews and reaching out to people just to learn. Very often, when you let someone talk about themselves, you make that connection with them. Sometimes they, will ask you questions about yourself, and they'll be able to recognize strengths and special things about you that then compel them to want to work with you in some way or collaborate with you in some way or introduce you to other people. I find people are very receptive to just sharing their experience and connecting you with additional people. So in general, it's good networking practice. And I think the principle applies as well as you're kind of looking for a mentor. I have never like directly asked someone, hey, will you be my mentor? That's just not my style. But I have found people have become advocates for me, kind of feel like they're in my court just by spending time with them. Really, it's powerful. And as you learn about people maybe you work more directly with in your life, finding what is important to them and how can you amplify that? How can you help solve their problems? So it's kind of operates by the law of reciprocity. When you invest in them, that makes them want to invest in you as well. Hopefully that's a helpful tip.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you come from a place of, I want to learn and I want to help you solve your problem, you'll never be annoying. People will love it.
Alrighty. One question that I have, so I actually graduate next month, so I'm definitely like in that mode of like applying for a bunch of jobs and all that stuff. And I would just want to ask you, what are some like the top qualities or like things that you look for when you're going over like applications and stuff, just so I know how to best market myself?
Absolutely. What you'll find in a lot of job postings when they expect a lot of people to apply, what will come forward the most in written form is like, we want people with this experience. We want people with technical skills. Da, da, da. And it's true, but I find more and more that that's kind of table stakes. People kind of expect that. I think cultural fit matters most to me, certainly, and it tends to matter as the common denominator across hiring managers. People seem to have the attitude that if you're generally smart, generally with it kind of a person and willing to learn, they can coach you, they can teach you, and anything you lack in your past experience or that you don't immediately demonstrate in your technical prowess, They can work with you if you're like a lovely person. So I think cultural fit is first and foremost what matters. It sounds cheesy and it's hard to really say that in a cover letter, but that's where it can start to come out. If you don't have that sort of face-to-face connection with the person as you're applying to the job, the cover letter is a good opportunity to be like, this is what speaks to me about your company. This is what I'm passionate about. This is how I have added value in a similar environment or an environment that had these similar characteristics. Or if you don't have that experience, like you can imagine yourself doing that and you're a very purpose-driven person, all those sorts of things. And having a very clear story for why them, why that company, why this role, and this is how I'm going to add value, like that just checks all the boxes for any hiring manager. And then them being able to get to know you and just sense that you're a cultural fit, that's how you can help make their job so easy. Because like I said, they don't want to think, they don't want to imagine, they don't want to conjecture. They want you to like spoon feed it to them because they're making so many decisions all day long. They just don't have the time and energy to be like, how can I fit this person into my machine? They just want you to like tell them and like smack them over the head with like your experiences, like, this is why I'm awesome. You should pay attention to me. You should hire me. And you can always do that in like a very tactful, congenial way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'll take one more question if we have it. Then I got to get my kiddos into bed. It's 8 o'clock here where I am. So. All right, going once, going twice. So this was an absolute pleasure. I really thank you guys for this opportunity to hang out with you today, and all the best in your job search, all the best as you finish up your courses this year, and never stop learning.
Thank you so much, Mimi. This was amazing.
You guys are
Thank
amazing.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Have a good one.
Bye.